Welcome to Mississippi, 1933, a land where the sun rises over fields etched with the sweat and sorrow of generations. Here children walk barefoot on dirt paths, their small feet sinking into the soil that remembers every story. Every footprint a testament to lives almost erased. Before we move forward, leave a comment where you're listening from, and the exact second your mind first felt the weight of this history. Share your heartbeat, your pause, your thought. For in this story, every listener becomes a witness. The wind carries whispers of the past, of burnt sugarcane and forgotten cabins. Shadows of ancestors stretch across the land, and somewhere the distant whistle of a freight train cuts through the morning fog like a ghostly reminder of those who vanished without a trace. Children with calloused hands grasp rags, remnants of dreams deferred. Their eyes hold the weight of labor, of nights spent in fear, of spirits lingering where Cain once burned. Mothers warn of ghostly presences, of dangers no book will ever record. The plantation stands silent, timbers leaning, shadows pooling beneath eaves. It is more than a farm. It is a ledger, written in sweat and tears, in lives forgotten. Every creaking floorboard, every rusted nail, tells a story of endurance, of survival. Pause. Listen closely. The faint laughter mingled with sorrow drifts on the breeze. Echoes of children almost erased, yet refusing to vanish entirely. Welcome to the untold story of those who endured sharecropping poverty and left their mark on a land that remembers. Before we move forward, leave a comment where you're listening from, and the exact second your mind first felt the weight of this history. Share your heartbeat, your pause, your thought. For in this story, every listener becomes a witness. It is the late spring of 1933. Mississippi, a state stitched together with cotton fields, cane farms, and the remnants of old plantations. The air hangs heavy with humidity, thick and sweet like the decay of earth and rot mixed with the faint scent of cane smoke from distant fields. Sunlight pierces through scattered clouds, falling in mottled patches across the dirt roads and the worn wooden planks of cabins. The ground is uneven, churned by the passage of laboring feet. Footprints of children, women, men. Generations moving in the same rhythm dictated by the rise of the sun and the whistle of the overseer. Small cabins lean under the weight of time. Weathered wood cracked by sun and rain. Roofs patched with scraps, tin plates, and whatever remnants of materials could be scavenged. The doors hang on rusted hinges, shifting slightly with the wind. Inside the rooms are sparse, rough-hewn bunks, stacked with straw, tattered blankets, a single lantern for light. The smell of smoke lingers from the previous night's fire, mingling with the earthy scent of damp soil carried in from outside. Every object, every corner of the cabin tells a story of survival, of poverty, of a childhood stolen by necessity. Outside the fields stretch endlessly, the tall stalks of cane swaying in a rhythm dictated by the wind. Children move through the rows, tiny hands clutching baskets, gathering what they can, picking through the stalks under the unforgiving sun. Their faces are streaked with dirt, sweat glistening along their temples, eyes wide and alert, trained to notice everything. The overseer's shadow approaching, the faint hum of insects, the whisper of a distant train. And somewhere faint but insistent, the call of a crow or a hawk, cutting through the hum of the day. A reminder that life continues above and beyond the toil of those below. In the distance, the remnants of the old plantation house rise. Columns, bowed, paint-flaking windows, dark and empty. The house stands like a sentinel of forgotten wealth, a monument to those who profited from the labor of the enslaved. And though decades have passed since emancipation, the echoes of that labor resonate here, in the cracked boards of the cabins, in the bent backs of those who now carry the legacy, in and the children who play quietly along the edges of the fields, their laughter carrying a hint of sorrow, their games imbued with the gravity of survival. Along the narrow roads, patches of forest frame the fields. Cypress and oak, their roots deep in the dark soil, their branches forming shadows that stretch long across the landscape. The wind rustles through the leaves, creating whispers that mingle with the faint voices of the children. Some say that the spirits of those lost in these fields, children, mothers, fathers, wander still, unseen but felt. A soft brush against the mind, a chill along the neck. The local elders speak of it cautiously, in tones hushed and reverent, warning the young ones not to linger in the woods after sunset. The superstition is as real as the cane, as real as the weight of labor on small shoulders. Alongside these forests, narrow dirt paths connect cabins, fields, and the occasional community well. The paths are worn smooth by years of repetition, feet carrying water baskets, bundles of firewood. The children know these paths intimately. Each stone, each root, each hollow in the earth, memorized through necessity. A slip here could mean a scolding. A misstep there could draw the ire of overseers or the watchful eye of adults responsible for maintaining order. The rhythm of movement is rehearsed, almost choreographed, a dance between survival and freedom. Fleeting moments of play interspersed with vigilance. A constant awareness of what the day demands and what the night might bring. At the edge of the fields, a small creek glints in the sunlight. Water dark with tannins from the surrounding forests, cool and moving slowly over rocks and mud. Children pause here to wash their hands, to drink, to dip a cloth and wipe sweat from their faces. The creek murmurs over stones, a soft, persistent sound that blends with the cries of birds, the distant caw of a crow, and the whisper of wind through cane and oak. It is the same creek their parents used, their grandparents before them, a silent witness to centuries of labor loss and endurance. The air carries the scent of distant fires. Perhaps a neighbor burning cane, perhaps the remains of an old kiln. Smoke curls lazily, curling over fields and forest, and with it the faint metallic scent of rusted tools. Hoes, rakes, plows left to age in the sun. The tools, like the children, are weathered, marked by the hands that wielded them. Hands that knew calluses before they knew toys. Hands that learned to count cotton bolls before they learned letters. And yet, despite the weight of expectation, the children move. They whisper to each other in hushed tones, sometimes giggling, sometimes solemn. Small acts of rebellion. Fleeting joys that assert life over the burden of circumstance. The soundscape is layered. The distant whistle of a train, the clatter of wood on wood, as doors creak, the faint hum of cicadas, the low murmur of voices carried across the fields. Every sound punctuates the day, a reminder that life is ongoing, relentless. The rhythm of labor, of survival, beats steadily, marking hours, marking generations. And yet there's an undercurrent, a subtle, almost imperceptible presence. Stories whispered by those who came before. Tales of children who disappeared. Of nights when the cane seemed to burn with a light of its own. Of shadows moving between the rows. These stories are passed quietly, woven into the daily tasks. Into the counting of steps, into the folding of cloth, into the bending of backs under the sun. As the sun climbs higher, the light changes. Glinting off tin roofs, warming the wooden planks, casting the children's shadows long across the dirt. The plantation is alive in its own way, breathing with the movements of those who inhabit it. Each person a note in a symphony composed of toil and survival. The cabins, the fields, the creek, the forests, all interconnected. A landscape of endurance, a living archive of struggle and quiet defiance. And through it all, the children navigate. Learning, surviving, remembering, unwitting historians of a life most would rather forget. Pause. Take in the scene, the smell, the sounds, the heat, the shadows. Imagine the hands, the feet, the eyes. Each detail a thread woven together into the tapestry of a day, a decade, a lifetime. Mississippi, 1933. The cradle of endurance, the stage of untold stories. The context is clear yet incomplete. Each sight and sound only hints at the depths of history beneath the surface. And as the day stretches on, so too does the weight of what is endured. The lessons of survival, the echoes of sorrow, and the quiet persistence of hope. The morning stretches on. The children move silently through the cane, their small hands grazing the stalks. Yet beyond the visible labor, there exists a record official cold, indifferent of lives, catalogued in documents that speak of fate unknown. Runaway slave ads, faded and brittle, line the pages of newspapers from decades past. If seen, please return. The words command, yet never truly account for the fear, the hope, the desperation contained in each child's heartbeat. Each advertisement, a snapshot, a frozen fragment of lives interrupted. The archives of the Freedmen's Bureau echo with lists of names. Names that hint at journeys unfinished. Children taken from families, parents left behind with nothing but a memory, a photograph, or a mark in a ledger. The bureaucracy records what it can, dates, places, tasks. But the human essence, the laughter, the tears, the whispered prayers in the dark, remains unspoken. And as the wind moves through the fields, one can almost hear the rustle of paper, the faint scratching of quill on parchment. A reminder that history is written by those who observe, yet lived by those who endure. And there are tales, whispered in the evenings, passed from mother to child, grandmother to grandchild. Stories of shadows moving between cabins, of footprints appearing in places no child had walked. Ghost stories mingled with warning caution woven into myth. A child disappears into the forest, and by morning a single shoe lies at the edge of the creek. No one speaks yet, everyone knows. The story circulates, passed in hushed tones during chores, during meals, during moments stolen from work. These legends persist. A folklore layer that softens the harsh edges of reality, yet sharpens the awareness of danger. The plantation itself seems to breathe with these stories. The cracked boards, the leaning beams, the rusted tools. Each carries a whisper, a history, and sometimes if one stands still enough, one might hear it. A footstep that is not one's own. A giggle carried on the wind, the soft murmur of voices long past. Some say these are spirits of children who vanished, gone without trace, yet unwilling to leave the earth they once touched. Mothers warn against walking alone after dusk. The superstition is both protection and memory. An oral archive that carries more truth than any official record. Beyond the plantation, the broader world intrudes. Newspapers from nearby towns report on disappearances, on children taken by circumstance, by poverty, by the indifference of those in power. Each headline a fragment. Child missing, fate unknown, family seeks information. The language is clinical detached. It records the event but not the human cost. Yet the words resonate, echoing across fields and cabins, mixing with the whispers of folklore, merging fact and legend. It is here in this intersection that history becomes both real and haunting. The children themselves are unaware, or perhaps they have learned to live alongside these stories. They move with the rhythm of survival, alert to every sound, every shadow. Their play is careful, their laughter guarded. Yet in moments of quiet, when the sun dips behind the trees, they imagine. They tell stories of phantom friends, of wandering spirits who guide them through the fields. A stick becomes a sword, a stone a talisman. These imaginings are both escape and preparation, a way to survive a world that demands more than childhood should bear. At night, the cabins take on a different character. Shadows stretch long along walls and floors, moonlight filtering through cracks in the wood. The wind sighs through eaves. In these hours, folklore emerges most vividly. Whispers of spirits who still work the fields, who still guide the lost, who call out in voices too soft to locate, too persistent to ignore. Children lie awake listening, imagining, sometimes hearing a footstep, a whisper, and in the morning, recounting what they heard with wide-eyed seriousness. Elders nod, acknowledging the unseen, their own childhoods remembered in those sounds. The tools of labor hoes, rakes, plows rest against cabin walls by night. Each one carries the imprint of hands that labored before. The calluses of children who began their days at dawn, who carried water-fed livestock, picked cotton and cane. Some of these children vanished, recorded in ledger after ledger, yet their labor and presence lingered, woven into the very fabric of the land. Each rusted nail, each worn plank, each footpath between fields is testimony, a silent archive that refuses erasure. Letters survive too, fragments from parents to children, or from overseers to agencies noting absence, neglect, disappearance. Last seen near the creek, failed to report for work. Words cold on the page, but the imagination fills them with warmth and terror. Who carried these children away? What thoughts crossed their minds? What fears did they endure while adults debated responsibility or wrote reports? That never captured the full reality. The human layer of fact is always heavier than the paper suggests. And yet, amid this life persists. Children sing softly as they work, songs carried from generations past, spirituals that speak of hope, of freedom, of resilience. These songs act as both shield and record, a melody that endures when paper fades, when memory is threatened. Each note a tether to ancestry, to survival, to a story that refuses to be silenced. And in their singing, the line between folklore and reality blurs. Every lyric a reminder that even in hardship, humanity persists. The combination of these elements, the archival records, the faded advertisements, the ledger notes, the whispered stories, the laughter, the shadows, the songs, creates a landscape where history and legend are inseparable. They intermingle in the fields, in the forests, in the cabins. Fact layer and folklore, layer entwined, a dual narrative that must be observed together to be understood. One cannot fully grasp the experience of these children without acknowledging both the documented absence and the whispered presence. Listen closely now. The wind rustles through the cane, the faint sound of a train whistle in the distance. The creek murmurs over stones. The children move quietly between the rows, and somewhere just out of reach, the echoes of vanished footsteps, of phantom children, of stories that never made the papers. They mingle with the mundane footsteps, laughter scolding, yet remain distinct, persistent, haunting. Fact and folklore interweave, creating a texture to the day, to the landscape, to the memory of what was endured. Pause, absorb it. The air, the ground, the shadows, the music, the whispers. Each element a piece of a larger story. Mississippi, 1933. A canvas painted in both sorrow and resilience. The children continue their work, small hands gripping worn tools, eyes alert, minds aware, carrying forward not only the labor demanded of them, but also the stories, the legends, the lessons embedded in the land. Every breath, every step, every glance, a living record of the intersection between fact and folklore. The afternoon sun presses down upon the fields, the air thick with humidity and the scent of churned earth. Children move carefully between the rows of cane, their small hands tracing the stalks as if reading a language older than words. Yet something lingers, just beyond vision, a subtle shift in shadow, a sound that shouldn't exist. And the children pause. listening, breath caught between work and fear. Not far from the creek, a boy once vanished. No trace left behind. The cabin door left ajar, the basket of rags untouched. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones. Some claimed to see a figure moving through the woods at dusk, a fleeting silhouette that vanished when approached. The parents searched, of course, calling his name into the thickening shadows. Their voices swallowed by the wind. Days turned to nights, nights to weeks. And still, no answer. Only whispers, only rumors. Fate unknown. Another incident, a girl found trembling by the edge of a burned cane patch. Scorched remnants, smoldering blackened stalks snapping underfoot. She claimed a fire rose from nowhere, a flame that moved without wind, without fuel. And in its light, shapes danced, children perhaps, or something older, something that had been waiting, watching, remembering. The adults nodded politely, dismissed the story publicly. But in private, their eyes betrayed recognition. A memory long buried, a cautionary tale preserved in folklore. A third case unfolded along the main path to the old mill. A group of children gathered to fetch water. One fell behind, then another, and when the last returned, their numbers were uneven. The overseer demanded answers. A ledger was updated. Names checked twice. No evidence recorded. No sign in the dirt, no footprints, no sound. Yet at night the remaining children whispered to each other about shadows moving between the millstones, of ghostly hands guiding or misguiding the lost. These whispers carried through cabins, drifting along creaking floorboards, until morning when the labor resumed as if nothing had happened. Each incident layered upon the other, a rhythm of disappearance and return, or non-return, weaving tension into the very fabric of the day. The children learned early the cadence of caution, where to step, where to look, which paths to avoid. Their games adapted. Hide and seek became a lesson in stealth. Tag carried an undertone of vigilance. Even play was informed by history, by fear, by stories passed down in whispers. Each one a cautionary tale, each one imbued with truth, though unrecorded in print, and the land itself seemed to respond. The cane swayed not only to wind, but to memory, to events unseen by most. Trees bent their branches as if to point. Creek waters gurgled over stones as if carrying warnings. The air vibrated with the weight of unseen presence. Every rustle in the leaves, every snapping twig was amplified in consciousness, creating a map of danger or guidance. One could never be sure. Fact and folklore intertwined, inseparable, guiding the children as surely as any overseer or parent could. The whispers of those who had disappeared lingered, sometimes in the fields, sometimes by the cabins. Some spoke of seeing a child's face reflected in the creek at night. Others claimed to hear faint laughter where no one should be. Mothers and elders taught the children to respect these signs, not as superstition alone, but as markers of a reality that had been cruelly shaped. A reality in which the line between life and absence, between presence and loss, blurred. Reports surfaced in nearby towns, letters to newspapers, entries in Freedmen's Bureau documents, child missing, fate unknown, last seen near cane patch. The official accounts are brief, cold, stripped of context. They fail to convey the fear that settles over families, the unspoken dread that each disappearance brings. Yet those words, though sparse, anchor the incidents in history. A thread of fact woven into the tapestry of legend, confirming that these are not mere stories whispered in cabins at night. They are grounded in reality. And still, life continues. The remaining children move with careful awareness. They play, yes, but their eyes scan, their ears attuned, their bodies learning instinctively the geography of survival. One child pauses, senses a movement, glances back, sees nothing, yet feels it. A presence just beyond perception. Their heartbeat quickens, yet they proceed. Small hands gripping baskets, bundles of cloth or simple toys. Their steps measured, cautious, deliberate. At dusk, the shadows grow long. Shapes merge and stretch. A soft breeze carries the smell of fire, of damp earth, of night-blooming flora. Somewhere faintly a whistle echoes, a train or something older, something that moves without wheels or rail. The children huddle closer to one another, speaking in whispers, recounting the day's incidents. The vanished, the burned cane, the moving shadows. Each recounting adds layers to the narrative, solidifying the folklore into lived experience, teaching lessons that no textbook could impart. By nightfall, the cabins settle into quiet. Floorboards creak under the wind, a lantern flickers in one corner, shadows dancing along walls. Outside the fields are a dark sea whispering. Children tucked into straw beds stare at the cracks in the ceiling. Imagine faces in the shadows, hear voices in the rustle of leaves. Some clutch small charms, simple trinkets meant to ward off what they cannot see. And yet sleep comes, brief, vigilant, dreams filled with echoes of what transpired, of those who vanished, of the fires of the shadows, weaving history, folklore, and memory into a single thread. And the pattern repeats. Disappearance, observation, storytelling, a rhythm as steady as the sun rising and setting over the cane. Each incident reinforcing the lessons of survival, of attentiveness, of respect for what lies beyond perception. Each child becomes a living archive, a recorder of events, a witness to what fact alone cannot convey. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker of movement is noted, internalized, remembered. Pause, reflect on it. The wind over the fields, the distant whistle, the soft glow of lanterns in cabins, the children's footsteps in the dirt. The tension of the day, the weight of survival, the delicate interplay of fear and learning. This is Mississippi, 1933, a landscape not only of labor and poverty, but also of stories that breathe, stories that haunt, stories that demand attention and acknowledgement. The morning breaks, soft light spilling over the fields, illuminating the worn cabins, the bending cane, the creek that twists through the land like a silver thread. Official records come into focus. The Freedmen's Bureau reports neatly typed or meticulously handwritten, listing names, ages, and fates. Exodusters moving north, families uprooted, children carried in baskets or on backs. Each entry a fragment, incomplete, an echo of a life in transition. Maps mark the paths of migration, lines drawn with ink, tracing movement from plantation to town, from cotton fields to distant cities. Every line tells a story of hope, of escape, of survival. And yet for every path documented, countless more remain unmarked. Journeys taken in silence by children too small to leave a trace, by families too weary to announce their flight. The land itself records these absences, footprints that vanish into dirt tracks in the mud, the gentle ripples in the creek, tangible evidence of movement that official reports fail to capture. Testimonies of military units filter in, letters from commanding officers noting Phantom Regiment movements, accounts of young soldiers of color who marched through battlefields under the cloak of night, disappearing, reappearing, leaving families and townsfolk questioning the record of their service. Names recorded, then struck through, fate unknown. Officially they existed. Unofficially their stories are wrapped in myth, in whispered tales of bravery, of loss of courage, unseen by the wider world. And intertwined with these formal documents are the oral histories, the folklore passed down, the legends of spirits who guard the fields, of children who vanished only to reappear as watchers, guiding those still laboring, still surviving. Some elders speak of dream visions, children dreaming of rivers of trains of fires, visions that predict or warn. And when the dreamer awakens, the path taken by someone else has changed. Unseen guidance or intervention. Fact and folklore entwined, inseparable. Teaching, preserving, warning. The towns of Harlem, though distant, echo these experiences. Newspapers report sporadically on missing children, on families arriving from the South. Accounts of hardship, poverty, and resilience. The language is clinical. Child unaccounted for, family relocated, fate uncertain. And yet beneath the words lies a human layer. Parents desperate to protect neighbors, watching silently, communities weaving together protective rituals. Spiritual gatherings where songs carry messages of endurance. Songs that double as warning, as record, as shield. Back in the fields, the children remember. Each event from the past layered upon the present. Shadows in the cane, footprints in mud, the rustle of leaves. Reminders that disappearance is possible, that unseen forces are real. And yet life continues. Baskets are filled, chores completed, steps measured. The work, the rhythm, the music of labor. These are anchors, against which the extraordinary, the unexplainable, the ghostly presences are felt, and sometimes even acknowledged, silently, with a glance, a pause, a nod. Reports from local officials, sparse though they are, add dimension. Observed movement at dusk, unaccounted children returned by morning, witnesses report shadows in fields. Each notation, brief as it is, confirms that the folklore is rooted in reality. That what the adults whisper in cabins at night is more than superstition. It is history experienced in real time, encoded into memory, into warning, into survival. And yet, the land itself is the greatest record keeper. Trees, soil, creek, cabin. Each marks events in ways subtle but enduring. A bent branch where someone hit a stone, displaced where a child fell. A scorch mark where a fire once flared mysteriously. These physical traces mingle with memory, with narrative, creating a layered history, one that requires both fact and folklore to understand. Each child learns to read this terrain, the signs, the hints, the ghosts of those who came before. By evening, the plantation hums softly with energy. The creek gurgles, wind sighs, insects whisper. Children whisper too, recounting the day's work, the vanished, the shadows, the unusual sounds. And stories blend with lessons, cautionary, instructive, each one reinforcing knowledge gained the hard way. Survival depends on observation, on memory, on heed. The folklore instructs, the facts confirm, the land witnesses. Music fills the air. Spirituals soft and haunting, sung quietly as children work. Their voices carrying across fields, echoing against cabin walls. Songs of hope, of endurance, of remembrance. Some claim that the songs themselves attract the spirits, that the children's voices become conduits, connecting the living to those lost, carrying stories that official records cannot. Fact and folklore, dancing together, inseparable. The night deepens. Lanterns flicker inside cabins. Shadows sway along walls. Outside, the cane bends under the moonlight. Every rustle amplified in consciousness. The disappeared are felt. Their presence a warning, a guide, a companion. Some children sleep with small charms, talismans handed down through generations. Others count their steps or repeat prayers softly. Rituals blending necessity with memory. A bridge between fact layer and folklore layer. Reports surface from distant towns. Letters, newspapers, official logs. Child relocated. Unaccounted for, cited briefly. Names written, struck, rewritten. Fate unknown. And in these dry words lies a weight. The weight of children moving through the world, invisible to many. Their stories intersect with legends. Phantom footprints, ghostly laughter warning spirits in cane and creek. The dual narrative persists. Fact and folklore inseparable. Shaping understanding, teaching survival, preserving memory. And the children continue. Tiny hands gripping baskets, eyes wide scanning for danger. Every footstep measured, every glance deliberate. They walk paths learned from memory and caution, the landscape itself a guide. The ghosts and spirits of those who disappeared as instructive as any adult. And as they move, they carry both history and story. The ledger of survival written not on paper, but on mind, on body, on earth itself. Pause. Listen. The wind in the cane, the creek murmuring over stones, the distant whistle. The children moving silently. Shadows stretching, shapes shifting. Fact and folklore intertwined. Each incident a reminder of the balance between seen and unseen, known and unknown. Mississippi, 1933. A land where history and legend merge, and children endure, learning, surviving, remembering. The sun begins to lower, casting long shadows across the fields. Golden light stretches along the rows of cane, and in that light the history of generations is visible, etched into the earth, pressed into the wood of cabins, imprinted on the backs and hands of children who continue to labor to survive. A shift occurs, a pause in the rhythm of work, a quiet that signals something unseen, a presence just beyond comprehension. Documents and letters speak again, reports of children disappearing and returning, of fires that rose without cause, of shadows moving between cabins. Names recorded, then struck, then annotated with caution. Fate unknown. Officials note events, but their words fail to capture the resonance. The ledger records absence, not spirit. Fact exists, yes, but the soul of experience is preserved in memory, in story, in whispers carried along the wind. And then the stories converge. The ghost tales, the vanished children, the burned cane, the phantom footsteps. All threads meet in the landscape itself. The creek, the fields, the leaning cabins. Even the air seems thick with observation, as though the past watches the present, guiding the living, warning, teaching. The children move with this awareness, a dance of survival learned over decades, centuries, inherited in instinct and story. A mother tells of dreams, visions of her children walking safely through fields where others were lost. Dream visions that warn of danger, dream visions that point the way. They speak softly of it at night, only to be heard by those who understand. The spiritual guidance is woven into daily life. Prayers, songs, charms, the rituals of the living intertwine with memory of the lost. Fact and folklore converging, inseparable. And as evening approaches, the wind carries whispers from the creek, faint laughter, footsteps that do not belong, shadows stretching longer than reason allows. The children pause, exchange glances, a subtle nod, recognition of what is present, the unseen guardians of their labor, and the echoes of those who vanished. These presences, simultaneously protective and haunting, guide each step, teach each lesson silently. Reports from distant towns and archives return to the stage. Letters, newspapers, Freedmen's Bureau logs. Child observed near creek. Returned fate uncertain. Official documents provide skeletons, outlines a bare framework. The folklore fills in the flesh, the color, the heartbeat. Together they compose a living history, tangible yet ephemeral, real yet dreamlike. And then a climax. A convergence of perception, memory, and record. A child disappears at the edge of a burned field. A shadow moves across the stalks. Another child freezes, senses prickle along the neck. A whisper drifts through the air, unintelligible but urgent. Eyes wide, hands clutch baskets, movement slows. The wind carries fragments of sound, soft giggles, distant train whistles, rustle of leaves, crackle of fire. all interwoven, all present. Mothers and elders gather. The warnings are repeated. Stay close. Watch. Remember, small charms are handed to trembling hands. Songs rise softly, spirituals that both shield and memorialize. The children understand without needing explanation. Their world is mapped by shadows, by whispers, by the rhythm of work, by the cadence of history. Every step is guided, every glance purposeful. The unseen is acknowledged, respected, observed. In the cabins, lanterns sway, casting dancing shadows on cracked boards. The air hums with memory and presence. Voices of children who once lived here, who disappeared, who returned, who never returned. Their spirits, if they can be called that, linger, observe, guide. Sometimes small movements are felt. A chair shifts, a door creaks, the faint sound of a footstep when no one is present. The children pause, understanding. Fact and folklore intertwined, inseparable. The plantation itself becomes a stage. The creek murmurs, the fields sway, trees bend in quiet acknowledgement. The wind carries whispers across cabins and paths. It is a rhythm older than any observer, older than the oldest child. It is the rhythm of survival, of memory, of story. A cadence that teaches, warns, preserves. The children, small but aware, move within it, understanding without words, guided by what is recorded and what is remembered, and in the deepest moment, the culmination of tension and observation, the dual reality of fact and folklore. A convergence occurs. The vanished child reappears, emerging from the shadows of cane, eyes wide, breath ragged. Others exhale in unison. The elders nod quietly, acknowledging the unseen. The children understand. The rhythm resumes. Lessons internalized. Caution maintained. Yet life persists. Work continues. Stories are told. Pause. Reflect. The wind carries the weight of observation. The creek murmurs with secrets. The shadows stretch long. Fact and folklore meet in this moment. The vanished observe, the living guided. Mississippi, 1933. The landscape alive with history, with memory, with presence. The children continue, hands clutching baskets, feet moving carefully, hearts attuned. They carry both what is documented and what is whispered. Walking archives of endurance, lessons of survival etched into mind, body, and land itself. As night falls, the shadows merge. The wind sighs through cane and trees. The creek murmurs. The lessons of the day settle into memory. The vanished, the guardians, the spiritual presences. Fact and folklore. Inseparable, intertwined. The children lie awake, listening, imagining, remembering, preparing. Each breath, each heartbeat, each whispered story. A bridge between what is known and what is unseen, guiding the next steps, ensuring survival, honoring the past. And so the climax resolves. Yet tension lingers, stories continue. The landscape holds them. Mississippi, 1933. A place where the past never fully departs. Where children endure guided by shadows and memory by fact and folklore. The night is alive, full of observation, full of presence. The rhythm persists, teaching, warning, preserving, and reminding. The night settles over the fields, a thick, damp quiet. Only the creek murmurs, carrying memories downstream. The children, exhausted but alert, lie in the cabins, their bodies pressed into straw beds. Their minds replay the events of the day, the vanished, the shadows, the whispers, the warnings. Each breath they take is measured, a rhythm learned from survival, from necessity, from stories passed down in silence. The plantation, once bustling, now rests under the weight of absence. Timber groans under the night wind. Shutters rattle. The creak of boards echoing the footsteps of those who walked here decades ago, and perhaps of those who never left. The land itself remembers. Every scar in the soil, every bend in the path, every rusted nail, holds a fragment of history, a trace of labor, a whisper of lives lived and lost. It is both archive and memorial, silent yet insistently present. Official records lie stacked in distant offices. Ledgers, letters, Freedmen's Bureau reports, child missing, fate unknown. Observed briefly returned by morning, names listed, dates noted, facts stripped bare. Yet these cold clipped documents cannot capture the human weight, the terror, the sorrow, the quiet resilience. They offer structure, skeletons of events, which folklore breathes into flesh, into emotion, into memory. The spiritual presence persists. Whispered prayers, songs, and charms maintain a connection, a bridge between the living and those lost. Each note of a spiritual sung softly over the fields resonates with the labor, the fear, the hope. It is as if the land itself hums the melodies, carrying echoes of children who endured, of spirits who guide, of lessons imparted invisibly. The dual narrative, fact and folklore, remains inseparable, instructing, warning, preserving. Communities carry forward these lessons. Stories told to the next generation, tales of vanished children, of fires that moved, of shadows in the cane. Each retelling reinforces survival, the necessity of vigilance, the knowledge that unseen presences are as real as the tools in hand. Even laughter is tempered by awareness, every game played carefully, every step measured. The landscape teaches, and the children learn. In nearby towns, newspapers fade into memory. Headlines, once stark, now seem thin against the weight of lived experience. Family relocated, child unaccounted for. The words exist, but they are hollow. They cannot convey the texture of fear, the rhythm of labor, the blending of reality and ghostly warning. Yet they serve as anchors, confirming in sparse ways that these events occurred, that history, though incomplete, is present. The nights carry the strongest echoes. Wind sighing through cane and trees, lanterns flickering in cabins, distant train whistles piercing the dark. Some children wake, sensing movement, hearing whispers, the soft ephemeral presence of those who vanished long ago. They do not scream. They do not panic. They know. The past is with them, present in the land, the shadows, the stories. The weight of endurance is carried lightly in awareness, yet heavily in memory. The legacy extends further, into adulthood. The children who survived carry the rhythm of this world with them. Their own children inherit the knowledge. Whispered instructions, spiritual practices, warnings of shadows, respect for the unseen. Life continues, and yet the past is never forgotten. Every scar in the earth, every bent tree, every quiet corner of the cabins, a testimony to what was endured, what was survived, what was witnessed, and still the land bears its own record. The creek flows as it did decades before, carrying debris, carrying stories, carrying fragments of voices from long ago. The fields shift under the moonlight, shadows lengthen, and the memory of those who vanished persists. Guiding the living, marking the paths, offering caution and wisdom. The children of today, the observers, the workers, all move with knowledge inherited from history and folklore alike. Even now, decades later, scholars, historians, and storytellers attempt to piece together these narratives. Their work admirable, yet incomplete. For no ledger, no newspaper, no map can fully contain the rhythm of fear, hope, and endurance. Only the land, the children, the spirits, and the whispers can convey the full tapestry. Fact and folklore remain entwined, inseparable, teaching, guiding, warning. The echoes of this history ripple outward, influencing communities, shaping culture. Spirituals sung in churches, songs of endurance in the night, tales recounted by elders. The memory persists. It is not static. It evolves, adapting to the present while honoring the past. Every listener, every observer becomes part of this continuum. Every pause, every reflection, every whispered story adds to the archive of human experience. Pause. Reflect. The wind carries it. The creek murmurs it. The cane sways with it. Mississippi, 1933. The children endured. Shadows and whispers followed. Stories of fact and folklore intertwined. The land remembers, and so do those who witness it. And in that witnessing, the story continues, unbroken, alive, teaching that survival is not only physical, but spiritual, social, historical, eternal. As the documentary draws to a close, the rhythm of labor, of memory, of story persists. The vanished, the present, the unseen, all converge in awareness. And as you listen, consider your place in this continuum. The fields, the cabins, the children, the whispers. They are all alive in memory, in story, in history. You have witnessed a day, a moment, a life in Mississippi, 1933. A story untold in textbooks, yet alive in land, in shadow, in song. Every fact, every legend, every whisper, a piece of the puzzle, inviting reflection, empathy, understanding. Pause, breathe. Consider the footsteps you cannot see, the hands that labored silently, the children who endured. And leave a comment. Share where you are listening, your heartbeat, your reaction. For in this story, every listener becomes a witness,